All right, let me make sure that we're actually broadcasting there where I think we are. And there is the happening now. Okay. Yep, we are there. I know, right? Okay. All right. Hello, hello, hello. All right. It is 5 o'clock Pacific time, so let us get started. Welcome everybody who's joining us on YouTube and Facebook. We do have a couple of folks here in the room. Yay! So, welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's get started with bringing ourselves to center here. So I invite you just to become aware of your breath, to recognize that that is the breath of the infinite breathing you. It is the breath of creation itself, breathing itself as you. The one, the infinite, the ever-present allness of life. That singular source, supply, substance that is pure intelligence, pure love, pure joy. It is the activity of creation itself that creates out of itself to experience itself in the multiplicity of form, expanding the one thing that it can expand, its experience. And so I know that I must be that. I know that all creation must be that. Fully infused with this one, never separate from it. And so this must be a time of the infinite gathering with itself, revealing itself in, through, and as each of us, as the questions, as the conversation, as the inquiry. And so I simply surrender to that. Surrender to knowing more of the divine through this process. And so I celebrate. I celebrate that everything that needs to be known, that wants to be known, is already fully present, already known, simply waiting to come into awareness. So we let that be this time together, a time of awareness. I let it go, I let it be with deep, deep gratitude. And so it is. So if you are joining us for the first time, you're joining us for our last time. As we're suspending this, at least for the summer. Let folks go enjoy the weather, and then we'll see how things are going when the seasons change, and possibly bring it back. And so what we do during this time is we spin our handy little prize wheel that is loaded with questions that folks have asked, and we endeavor to answer them. And what I can tell you is that there are many answers. There is no one answer to anything. And as we were chatting briefly before, it's all, as long as we're using words in the English language, we are operating from assumption and interpretation and experience. And so we all have a different experience. Words mean different things to each of us, even common words. And so this is really a time of just exploring. And I invite you, if you're joining us online, to add things to the chat, to ask questions in the chat. There's about a 30-second delay to what's happening in the room and what's happening in the virtual. So I will do my best to catch the questions and respond. The folks in the room do have a microphone if they choose to use it. If they choose not to use it, then I will relate whatever questions or comments that they make to the best of my ability so you too can have those. All right, so let's get started. I just love this wheel. I don't even know why. Well, there you go, Barbara. You got your wish. Can you explain hidden beliefs? The short answer is yes, I can. And I suspect whoever sent that wanted a bit more than yes. The thing about hidden beliefs is, first of all, they are beliefs that are hidden. Now, they're not hidden as in no part of us knows that they're there. They're hidden as in outside of our immediate awareness that we hold those beliefs. They are the beliefs of social conditioning. They are the beliefs of human norms, if you will, generational beliefs that have been handed down. They are those parts of us that are unquestioned, that are so normal, that are so embodied within us that we simply, it's all those places that, well, that's just how it is, beliefs. All of those things that we hold that that's just the way it is are beliefs that are operating. When we say they're hidden, we're just simply saying that they are operating outside of our immediate awareness. Now, why is that important? Because those beliefs that are so deeply embodied that they are unquestioned are the ones that operate with the most efficiency. Right? So if we're walking around with a fundamental belief that life is hard, well, thoughts are things, right? So if we're walking around with a belief operating in the background that life is hard, then our life is going to show up as hard. Right? If we're holding a belief, if we were raised with a belief, one that I've had to really work on was 7 years old. My father sat me up on a barrel and looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're an Ellis, by God. You don't take nothing from nobody." Now, at 7, I just took that in. So I had this hidden belief operating that based on my last name, I had this whole identity that meant something I didn't even know how to explain. I just knew that it wasn't okay for me to receive anything from anybody, period. So that showed up as keeping the whole world at arm's length, never being able to receive anything, not love, not gifts. Every time someone gave me something inside of me automatically kicked in, how do I pay them back? Because I'm not allowed to receive. Because that was the message I got. So that was a hidden belief that was operating for all of my childhood and most of my adult life. And so how do we find our hidden beliefs? We look at what's showing up in our life and work backwards. What belief is outpicturing as the events and circumstances of my life? Thus, hidden beliefs. And we all have them, folks. Everybody has hidden beliefs. We all have them. And I don't know that we ever get rid of all of them. Maybe somebody has. If you are that somebody, please put it in the chat and tell us how you got rid of all of them. Because I know they still come up. And so, any comments in the room? Additional questions? You have to turn it on.
Comments in the room. Well, I love this question. Thank you for whoever asked it. I think one of the keys about hidden for me is the recognition that they are often hidden from me. And so, that being said, I need assistance with excavating them. And it's a tender process, and it's something that I can help people do as a practitioner, but I also recognize that I need help being able to do it. And entering into that sacred relationship and allowing, with great trust, for that to be revealed. And the great thing is the resistance I feel about it sometimes is, it's going to be something horrible and terrible and harmful, and when really, in reality, it's to be brought to my awareness, for truth to be poured into it, and for it to be changed, and for me to get free.
Well, and I love that you brought up the resistance piece. And I would submit that whatever belief is operating that creates the resistance is, in fact, a hidden belief. Right? That there's a hidden belief operating that ignites all of that internal dialogue that it's going to be horrible or it's going to be this, and that oftentimes we argue for our limitations from a hidden belief about our hidden beliefs, that we even have them, right? And one of the big ones is that there's something wrong with us because we have hidden beliefs, right? That having hidden beliefs in and of itself makes us bad and wrong. No, it makes us human on planet Earth. It doesn't make us bad or wrong. Yeah. Can you help her turn that on there, Deborah? There you go.
So, do we get these hidden beliefs before we're even born? Or like in your case, when you were 6 or 7 and your dad sat you down, is that how we get these hidden beliefs? I mean, are they there before we know what's going on?
Great question. And it's a both and. Karmically, and this is oftentimes we can say misunderstood, or we can just recognize that people relate to karma differently. What I learned in ministerial school studying Buddhism is that karma is really talking about the social tendencies, the human tendencies to think and believe a certain way that are passed on generation to generation. So from that perspective, from a karmic thread, yes, we get them before we ever get here, because they're part of what is passed on through this experience of humanity, right? Beliefs that I the best example, the most playful example, one of them that I know, is in the beginning of the book Born to Win. And it's the story of a daughter and her mother are cooking dinner. And the mother is preparing a roast, and she takes the roast out of the wrapper, and she's doing her thing, and she automatically lops off both ends of the roasts and discards them and puts it in the pan. And the daughter, being curious, is like, why did you cut off both ends of the roast and throw them away? And the mother thought about it, and she's like, well, that's just how my mom did it. And so the daughter made contact with her grandmother and asked her grandmother, why in our family do we just automatically cut off both ends of the roast and throw them away? And her grandmother just laughed. She's like, because when my mother was cooking the roast and when I learned from her, the roast was too big for the pan. Right? And so 3 generations later, no matter how big the pan is, we just automatically cut off both ends of the roast and discard them. Those are the kinds of things that we just hand off to one another without examination, because that's just the way we do it. Okay? Now that's a pretty harmless example, but it's indicative of how these hidden beliefs operate and how, like you ask, do we come into them? Sure we do. Sure we do. Think about religions that have gone on for centuries, right? We're not examining the basis of those religions. We're simply believing it because this is what we were raised with, right? And so the hidden beliefs were already there. Now, we can take that one step further to this idea of a collective consciousness. Okay? And if we understand the eternality of consciousness and the infinity of consciousness, then we begin to understand that there's no way for any thought that has ever been thunk to stop. Okay? So every thought that has ever been thunk remains active and alive in the collective consciousness into eternity. And so all of those, we're born out of that consciousness. We live in that consciousness. We're surrounded by that consciousness. So yeah, we're made with those beliefs as part of us. All hidden. And I think we do a Tuesday night discussion group once a month. And after one of those sessions, it's an actualizing wholeness discussion group. And it's based on the work of David Bohm and really questioning everything. And it's a really cool group. And one evening after we had that group, I was sitting out on our back deck, and I put my coffee cup down and noticed that when the coffee cup hit the table, it rippled. The coffee rippled. And when it got to the edges of the cup, the ripple stopped. Right? And what the aha moment for me was consciousness doesn't have that outer edge. An infinite consciousness has no outer edge. And that outer edge is required to stop the ripple, to stop the vibration. And so in an infinite consciousness, every movement is always continuing into infinity. There's no stopping point. And then it was just a different way of understanding collective consciousness and how powerful thought is, because it goes on forever. Right? And I had a moment of, wow, that's really cool, followed by, oh my God, every thought goes on forever? Yeah, yeah. Well, what was just verbalized in the room is yikes. Exactly. And so it invites us to be very aware and very intentional about what we're adding to that collective consciousness.
So,
Mm-hmm.
thought, even if it doesn't get expressed,
Mm-hmm.
is still there and stays for all time? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what you mean by a thought that doesn't get expressed, because a thought is an expression.
Okay, let's put it this way. If you don't bring the thought out through your mouth.
Ah, great. So if a thought is not actually verbalized, does it still have power? Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is exactly the nature of hidden beliefs. They're still operating, but they're not being verbalized, but they're still happening, and they are still engaged. Right? I mean, look at society right now. Look at all the stuff that isn't necessarily being talked about. It's still happening, right? We can be in a group of people and be completely divided and not ever actually connect with one another. And all of the conversation in the room can sound like we're very connected. And yet, the internal dialogue, the silent dialogue, the unaware dialogue separates us.
They're called the monkey mind?
Sure, you can call it monkey mind, you can call it, the hamster wheel, or we can be completely unaware that it's even happening. Right? Some of the stuff that has surfaced as we, and I'll speak from a national perspective, because that's my experience, but here in the United States, as we begin to more overtly confront racism, right, what is surfacing is how much of it has been operating for people that they had no awareness that it was operating in them. Now, that's not excuses. It's true, and it's designed to operate that way. It's designed to operate at the automated subliminal level, because that's where it's most effective.
Put it simply by saying commercials that you watch on TV or
Mm-hmm.
that you watched when you were a child,
Mm-hmm.
and how, if I were to say something to you about a line,
Mm-hmm.
Winston tastes good, like, and you would know exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, that is so ingrained in there.
Right. And it comes from TV. It comes from lots of places. It comes from television. It comes, our first indoctrination to all of it is in our birth families. Right? Because those are the people that we're with. And then, if we're raised in the church, we get it from there. We get it from television. We get it from radio. We get it from the friends that visit our home, our parents' friends. Then when we go to school, well, now we're getting it from all over the place, because not only are we getting it from the books that we're reading and the school system and the education system, now we're getting it from every child that we go to school with. And what we're getting from each of the children that we go to school with is everything they got from their birth families and their relatives and their friends that visited that home. And whatever church they were raised in, if they were raised in one. And so you can see how it exponentially builds. Right? And all of that is unconscious. And it's phrases like good neighborhoods and bad neighborhoods. The right side of the track, the wrong side of the track. Right? Phrases that on the face of it don't overtly talk about racism or supremacy, but they're based in it, right? We're raised with gender identities. Well, who decided? A culture way before we were born decided, right? That this is a woman's place and this is a man's place, right? But that's what we were all taught, that this is what a woman is. Whether it's accurate or not doesn't matter. And to question it as children, for most kids, now that's changing over over my lifetime. That has changed, but 60 years ago, you didn't question. This was just who you are, because this is the anatomy you were born with. And that's your gender identity. Right? So yeah, we're born into it, and we absorb all of that, and those things become hidden beliefs.
Now, would you say that the Bible has gone very whatever to put that distinction there? Men and women?
So the question is about the Bible. Here's what I will say. I won't blame the Bible, because the Bible in itself, Bible didn't write itself. Right? The Bible was written by human beings, and it was written about their very human experience. And everyone who reads it interprets it. And that's not just the Bible, that's any book.
Well, I'm only
Okay.
saying that because the Bible apparently was inspired by God to man.
Well, that's what we've been taught. See, that in and of itself is a belief. And it was a belief spoken by a human being. Right? And it's the categorical taking it for fact without examination that anchors it as a belief. And part of what I think we have to be really careful of as we challenge hidden beliefs is to do so without needing to blame anybody. Because if I'm making the Bible bad or wrong, then there's a belief operating there about the people who wrote it, and I'm making up things about why they did what they did, and the reality of it is, I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know what their motive was. What I know is this has been my experience of many people who use that book and how they've interpreted it. So that gives me information about how my beliefs have been impacted, and then I get to choose. But if I'm stuck in blaming someone else, I'm not at choice, because I'm operating from victim consciousness that says what they did has the power to still control me. It's a messy, convoluted process.
So I just had one thing I wanted to add to that. That makes perfect sense, what you just explained. And I was contemplating why it is I keep returning to wanting to blame.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's twofold. One, it's the indoctrination in our society or culture, and I think probably at large, like the world, that there's just got to be somebody to blame for all this stuff.
Absolutely.
You know? So we got to find that, like, we got to nail it down who is to blame.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, and then it's the pattern of continuing to return to, you know, that place of blame, and as if that's going to give me some freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I know who's to blame,
Right.
like that does nothing for me.
Right.
But somehow I think it does.
Right.
So,
And that's what I was speaking to earlier, that even our resistance is the operation of a hidden belief. Right? And that's a perfect example, because yes, we are all raised. If you go to the Four Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz so brilliantly lays it out that our programming is based in the reward-punishment system. The reward-punishment system is based in somebody has to be blamed. Right? So it makes sense, if we look at the foundation of it, it makes sense that the operation of that is going to fool us into thinking that if I can figure out whose fault it is, then that's the doorway to my freedom. The problem is it's not. But that's what we've been taught, that the solution, if you will, is to find out whose fault it is. And as soon as we know that, we have the solution. Does that make sense?
so I love that, to just keep reminding myself that there's no value in knowing who's to blame.
No.
And if I find myself doing it, it's been a lifetime indoctrination into that.
Mm-hmm.
And most everybody around me does that.
Yeah.
And so sometimes joining in that is to feel that connection with another person, even if it's not a helpful connection,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just in the dialogue of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how long I'll be practicing on doing that, but, you know, it's true.
Yeah.
There's no value in knowing. I mean, I think there's a value in understanding history, and there's a value in understanding how a thing became a thing that it
Yes.
is. But then, once you got that,
Mm-hmm.
to keep reviewing it just seems unnecessary.
Yeah. No,
Let's put it that way.
I totally get what you're saying. And I think it invites us to differentiate blame from assessment. Okay? If we're trying to solve a problem, right? Assessing where something got broke may well help us fix it, right? Especially in mechanical stuff. Okay? If my vehicle isn't running well, I need to assess what the problem is so I know what to fix. Okay? Now, if I get lost in how come it broke, whose fault it is that it broke, is it the manufacturer's fault? Is it somebody on the assembly line, first day on the job, that didn't do something right's fault? Is it the design's fault? Is it the gas, the people that I bought gas from, did they give me bad gas? Is it their fault? Well, now I'm lost and nothing's getting fixed, right? It's amusing story. You get to the hotel, you have a reservation for your hotel room, right? You get to the registration desk, and the person behind the counter says you don't have a reservation. And so you argue for a half an hour about whether or not they have a registration for you without ever saying, do you have a room? Which is really all you want is a room, right? But we get lost in, I had a registration. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. These people said I did, blah, blah, blah. And now we're off in the blame game. And the reality is, all we probably need to do is say, do you have a room? Oh, sure, we've got 10 rooms. Can I have one? See, problem solved. But we get lost in who's right, who's wrong, whose fault is it? And we don't ever solve the problem. That's the same thing that happens with our hidden beliefs. Instead of just matter-of-factly, without attachment, recognizing that, oh, that's a hidden belief operating in me that is showing up as this in my life, which instantly empowers us to shift our belief. And when we shift our belief, we change our life. See, that's a very simple, efficient pathway. We get lost in who gave me this belief. Where did it come from? Why did they do that? And now we're off in various forms of the blame game. And I invite you to really ask yourself, does it matter? Does it matter where the belief came from? If it does, chase it down. But if you can answer that question and it changes nothing, why does it matter? Why does it matter?
Would that be anything attributed to why people don't like to take responsibility?
Okay, so here's the question in the room. Does that relate to why people don't want to take responsibility? I will caveat this with, I don't know why they don't want to. I can't even say with accuracy that they don't want to. Because that is speaking to somebody's internal motivation, which I don't know. But what I can say is, yes, that kind of thinking, that thought operation stops us from taking responsibility. The hidden belief operating that somebody has to be at fault, that somebody has to be blamed, that blame even has value. See, there's more than one hidden belief operating in this craziness. One, the very foundational belief in this example is that blame even has value. It doesn't. It changes nothing in my experience. Nothing. At best, I can put it in a box. Right? I can make myself a little box that says, whose fault is it? Yeah. And every once in a while, I can open my little box and go, it's your fault. But it has changed nothing. Yeah. What do we want to do? What do we want to experience instead? That changes something. All right. Let's see how Spirit connects this. Does everyone have a separate soul? No. That's the short answer. As I understand our teachings, as I understand soul, soul is actually not a thing that we have. And if I had a whiteboard, I would use Ernest Holmes' teaching symbol. Soul is that middle section of the teaching symbol. Soul is the activity of creation, is how Ernest Holmes explained it, and I think he's accurate. Part of what we have to understand is even in that teaching symbol that we use where there are 3 levels, we often misunderstand that as 3 separate things. It's not. It's not creator, the law, the form as separate things. It is one thing expressing itself 3 different ways. Okay? There is consciousness, and there is consciousness expressing as thought. And the activity of consciousness that we call law. Law simply defines how consciousness moves itself from thought to form. It's just describing the operation of consciousness. That is the soul. That is soul. Is the operation of consciousness, the movement of consciousness from thought into form. And so, and I think where it gets misunderstood is that because we are in form, infused, made out of consciousness, by consciousness, infused with consciousness, surrounded by consciousness, and we are given free will by this thing that creates us. We are centers of conscious creation, right? And so we simultaneously have the power and the authority to use consciousness through our creative power, thought, and we are that. And so we are the activity of that, and we have the activity of that. But we don't have a separate soul. We are soul because we are the activity of creation in form, infused with creative activity. Does that make sense? Barbara's got the I'm scratching my head look.
Probably the belief system that I was raised in,
Uh-huh.
that we are spirit, we are soul, each one of us has a soul.
Yeah, and that's where what the comment is in the room is that it's probably the religion that we're raised with, that each one of us has a soul. And I think my battery might be going here because it's getting a little funky on the sound. No, but you can hand me that microphone, that'll help. It's not that we have a soul. We are soul. And the trick is that we have to reframe. Again, it's a hidden belief that we get to choose whether or not we're going to keep that belief or whether we're going to dive into a different understanding. And that's one reason why study is so important, that we actually read and study and take things apart so that we can challenge things we were just handed. Well, is that accurate? Right? And I encourage folks that, if we can explore from a perspective of accuracy rather than good and bad, right or wrong, up or down, is it accurate? Is this the most accurate understanding that's available to me? Rather than is it right? Because all of these are going to connect to that first question, right? So if I'm stuck in is it right, I'm stuck in some form of blame. Because in order to be right, I got to make somebody wrong. Accuracy is just, is this the most accurate understanding that's available based on all of the information? And in oneness, in one quantum field where nothing is separate, the idea of separate souls can't coexist in that. That requires separation.
Would that be the belief system that we are not God? I mean, we are not all God. God is all of us.
Yes, we are not all of God, but God is all of us. Exactly. There's, if we're relating to God, the word God, as consciousness, and there's one consciousness. In our own teaching, Ernest Holmes says over and over again, there's no such thing as your consciousness and my consciousness. There's just consciousness. Same thing applies to soul. There's no such thing as your soul and my soul. There's just soul. Right. Right.
And we talk about it in our culture, we talk about our own individual souls.
Right.
I would too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the point Deborah's making in the room is that it requires us to shift our beliefs and our perspective because that's not what we're taught. And, the American culture is a culture of what's called Christian hegemony, okay, which simply means a saturation of the Christian perspective. And it's everywhere. Right? Look at your money. In God we trust. Okay? When you testify in court or any time you sign an affidavit, you put your hand on the Bible. Right?
Do they still do that?
I don't know. I don't know if they do that in any jurisdiction or every jurisdiction. So that may have changed. I haven't had to be sworn in to do anything for quite a while. I know when I was sworn in as a deputy, that was absolutely part of it. Okay? And again, it's a word. If we go back to the original writings of the Bible in Genesis, there are clues there about how things got interpreted. Because the original writing says, in the beginning created God. The way, yeah. See, our Bibles, the English says, in the beginning God created. The actual initial writing was, in the beginning created God. And if you read it in context, and if you read it with an understanding of the original language that the Bible was written in, what it's really saying in the beginning of Genesis is that humanity created the image and likeness of God in order to attribute creation to God. We created God and then attributed creation to it. Because nowhere is there ever a conversation about what God was created out of. It just magically appeared. And God is a concept. God is a concept about consciousness formed by humanity. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. People's interpretation of it depends on that, but consciousness itself doesn't depend on that. And see, that's where things go sideways, is when we attribute our limited human understanding as the only answer to an unlimited, unformed consciousness. That should be a clue to us right off the bat that we're inaccurate. Because an unformed infinite consciousness can have no finite form. The minute we try to establish a finite image of the infinite, we have limited the infinite, which is always going to be inaccurate. It's a lot to, and it does, it brings us to a place to question everything, because what we've been conditioned to believe is limitation. And what we're made of and what's available to us is the infinite possibility. And it challenges everything we think we know.
Well, I think it's a deeper, as we go deeper and study more and understand, it's like understanding how, I mean, that whole
Hegemony, Christian hegemony, yeah.
I understand that more now than the first time I ever heard it.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, and I liken it to the 12-step ones, how easy it is when you talk about God, and he's a he, and our language is this, and our language is this certain kind of way. And what I realize is that's not how everyone experiences, believes, or talks about God.
Right.
And so, but there is this indoctrination that, you know, this is how we talk about it in the Western world.
Right. And so what's being shared in the room is how easy it is to get comfortable in this languaging of God as a he, as having a residence somewhere in the clouds, right? And you know, what all of that means, when the reality of it is the indefinable is indefinable. But that argues with our ego that finds its safety in defining things.
So it's our ego, not our mind? I mean,
Well, the ego is, it depends on how you're using mind. The ego, you know, in science of mind, when we say mind, we're talking about infinite consciousness. Most of the time in humanity, when we're saying mind, we're actually talking about our brain. Okay? Our brains are always seeking to problem solve, because our ego, which is designed to protect us in this physical realm, is always looking for problems that it perceives as a threat to our physical well-being, and it works in cooperation with the brain to solve those problems to make us safe. That's not a bad thing. It's a necessary thing for the survival of the species. Okay? The ego helps us understand that stepping out in front of a car when it's moving is not a healthy thing to do. Right? So if we can lean into understanding that we're made with an ego, do we think Creator made a mistake? Do we think creation goofed when it gave us an ego? I don't think so. I think we are off the mark when we vilify our ego instead of understanding what its function is and living in alignment with its function from a different perspective, to where the ego, we're not going to be in human form without one. Okay? It's part of the package. The analogy that works for me to help me remember is that the ego is a passenger. The spiritual me is driving my bus. And sometimes I fall asleep and the ego slips into the driving seat. And then I wind up in places where I'm like, how did I get here? My hidden beliefs were driving the bus. My ego was driving the bus.
well, in this human form, we have to be able to sit there and have everything be explained out. And you can't explain God or conscious to really to our mind, because it goes beyond what we're capable of being able to gather in.
It goes beyond what my brain can grasp, yes. It goes beyond my brain understanding. I would disagree that we have to have it all laid out. That's one way of getting there, but we actually have direct revelation available to us the minute we choose to play in that realm. And that's about removing. Okay? Rumi said it this way: it is not our job to seek and create more love, but simply to remove the barriers that we've created against it. Okay? We don't have to explain God. We don't have to explain consciousness. What we have to do is remove all of the hidden beliefs that block us from experiencing it, because it's what we are, fully available to us in every moment. It is our beliefs that separate us from knowing it. We have 1 minute. And you know, this is the beauty of study, because it can go deep very quickly, and it can, if we will just lean into the inquiry. See, it's the ego that seeks a final point of the answer. If we will allow ourselves to blissfully play in the question, then we get understanding. We may never get the answer, but we get understanding and we get experience. And mostly the thing I cherish the most is that I get a deeper experience of me, the real me, the God me, the spiritual me, the soul of creation me. Yeah.
So I know that we're going to be taking a break here from doing this, but this is what I love about Ask the Rev and this format that you've created that I'm so grateful for. And that is, it helps me to remember that there is so much to learn. And there's so much layers to keep being peeled back, that it doesn't matter how many classes I've taken. It doesn't matter that I'm a licensed practitioner. And it doesn't even matter if I were to become a minister, that there's always learning going on. And the more that my hidden beliefs are revealed to me, and the more that I just keep seeking, this is like a lifetime of understanding. So what I thought in the very beginning, many moons ago in Science of Mind is very different now. So I'm so grateful for this format. I just want to say thank you, thank you. This has been just a great joy. And whenever you decide to resume this again, I mean, truth be told, I have this privilege because I get to be with you, but I mean, it's just, you're just a master teacher, and it's really good to question, and it's really good to be in a place where I'm with a teacher that allows that questioning. So thank you. And I think Barbara has something she wants to say.
Well, I just want to say that I really have appreciated this too, because there's so many, like that first question that just kind of blows your mind. I mean, but I appreciate you, everybody. I really do, and I've enjoyed being able to come up and be here. I mean, it's not a short drive, but that's okay. I've enjoyed it, and I thank you, and I look forward to when it comes back.
Thank you, both of you. So here's the thing. If you like playing in this realm, the first Tuesday of every month, Actualizing Wholeness Discussion Group is a whole lot of this. And, the only difference is, instead of it being on Facebook and YouTube, it's on Zoom. But it is available. It's, it's in our newsletter. The Zoom link is there. Everybody, anybody is welcome. We tend to focus it on some of the brain-bending ideas of David Bohm, who has given me permission to question everything I think I know and to constantly learn more. And he has opened up a joy for just living in the inquiry for me. And so I invite you to join us for that. Yeah. I love you all. Hi, Mary Lou. And we'll see where all this goes, because the future I do not predict. It just doesn't go well. So I love you bunches. I'm going to hop over there and turn off the live stream now. Yeah, thanks for playing.